back to my channel. My name is Timikemza James. For our new and old subscribers, you're welcome to today's tutorial where I'm going to be showing you how to draft a basic off-shoulder blouse. So I just discovered I do not have a tutorial on off-shoulder on my channel, and guys, that's an error. So guys, I'm going to be showing you how to do that in this tutorial. So if you want to do this, make sure you watch this to the end and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any tutorial such as this. That's if you're not yet subscribed, and make sure you hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever I have this video up on the channel, and do ensure to like and share this video with your friends, guys. So without further ado, let's get into drafting. So guys, I just went ahead to draw a starting point here like so, and this other side. So this is in no way anything compulsory, you can just do as you like. So this off shoulder is actually gotten from a basic bodice blouse, so I'm going to be linking my tutorial on a basic bodice blouse in the description box, and do ensure to go and watch that as well after watching this. So now the off shoulder is simply a regular blouse without the upper side, that's from the chest line upwards to the shoulder point, right? That's what is absent in this tutorial. So now you're going to determine how deep you want your off shoulder, that's the neckline of your off shoulder, right? So let's say you measure from your shoulder till heading towards your bust point till where you want your off shoulder to start, and you really don't want it to be extremely low. So anything from, let's say, the highest you should go for off shoulder is 3.5, and the lowest I advise you go is 7 inches. You shouldn't go beyond 7 inches, and even this 7 inches is a lot, guys. So we are going to make it 5 inches for this tutorial, right? So I'm taking off 5 inches. So instead of starting my drafting like so, putting 1 inch from here, I'm going to put that 5 inches from here, right? From this our beginning point here. So now we are going to go ahead and continue inserting our measurement. So with your 5 inches on your starting point, you're going to continue with your vertical measurement. That's from the distance from your bust from your shoulder to your bust point. You'd go how many inches is it from my shoulder to my bust point. So I'm doing, for mine is 12.5. then I'm going from the bust point from the shoulder to my under bust measurement. What do I have? I have 17, and then to my affluence, which I have 20. So I'm going to come over to this side to do the same thing so that I can square my line. So you can see this 5 inches still remains to my bust point, 12.5 to my under bust, 17, and 20 for my affluence. So I'm just going to square out that line. So you want your pattern paper to be long enough to do your front and your back. But if you don't have that, that's fine, you can always do your back later. So now I'm going to insert my bust span measurement on my bust line. So I'm going to measure this bust line, under bust line, affluence line, and then this is my hip line, right? So I'm doing the complete blouse, right? So I'm going to do my bust span measurement, which is 4.5. that's the half of my bust span is 4.5, like so. So I'm going to put the 4.5 on my hip line as well, and I'm going to connect that point because I want to draw a straight line so that I can take my darts, right? So for this tutorial, I'm going to be doing a basic dart, right? So I'm going to come to my under bust point and insert my dart. I want 1 inch on both sides, which is a total of 2 inches for my dart. So I'm going to do the same thing on my affluent. So on my hip line, I'm coming up by 3 inches, or let's do 2.5 inches, like so that I'll connect my dart. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect my darts like so. I'm connecting my points together, right? So I'm going ahead to do like so. So my blouse length is 20. The blouse length I want to use here is 24 inches, guys. So 24 and a half, let me do 24.5. So I'll put that 5 inches here and measure, or I'm just doing 25 inches. So I'm going to measure 25 on this side as well. Then I'm going to connect this line like so, right? So now I'm leaving 26 on the front. That's because I want a side bust dart, right? So that's why I'm going to be leaving this 26, but at the back I'm going to have 25 inches. That's why I needed to draw this line. So now I'm going to come over to this point, which is my neckline, right? And then I'll measure. Now you measure the distance of your chest across your chest. That's from one armhole point to another. Then I would put a picture of that measurement up on the screen for you to see. So I'm going to insert that measurement, half of that measurement, because we have half scale measurement, right? So mine is going to be 6.5, like so. So I'm marking my 6.5 like so. So now I'm going to still place that 5 inches on that 6.5 points. Then I'll mark my regular armhole line, which is 8.5 for me. So I'm going to connect that in a straight line. That would be my chest line, right? And also a guide for, is also going to be a guide for me to know how deep my neckline should not exceed. That's for me. You can go deeper than you, whatever depth you want. So now I'm going to insert my bust measurement. Now my bust measurement divide by 4 is what I'm going to be marking here, like so. So I'm going to come to my affluence point and mark my affluence divide by 4, right? So I'm going to mark it here, my affluence circumference divide by 4. Then I'll mark my hip circumference divide by 4 as well on the hip line. Then I'm going to be connecting those points. I'm using my curve. You can use ruler, but make sure you don't have any sharp angle, right? So on this side I'm just going ahead with my ruler to connect like this. Now don't forget that that's at depth. So I have 2 inches of that on the affluence point. So I'm going to be inserting that 2 inches back like so. Then I'll be connecting it to this armhole point like so. So that's me paying back for my dart. Then I'm going ahead to make this line for my hip like so, right? So now I'm going to insert my side bust dart. So from my armhole point, now let's go ahead and draw out our armhole measurement first, right? So now I'm adding 1 inch from that 6.5, that's across my 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 front bodice that I measured, I'm adding 1 inch. That's going to be for sewing allowance and just in case, right? So I'm going to connect that with a curve to my armhole like so. I'm just going to go ahead and connect that point like so. So I have my armhole curve. From there, now I'm going to go ahead to measure 2 inches downwards from my, now it's left for you to determine if you want an under armhole dart or a bust dart like so. So wherever you want your dart to come from, that's fine. I'm going to do mine 2 inches below my armhole. So I want the dart to be 1 inch, so I'm going to mark 1 inch from that 2 inches. So I have 1 inch here. So the dart is going to be pivoted towards the bust, but it's not going to reach exactly on my bust. So I'm going to mark 1.5 inches away from my bust like so. Then I'm going to pivot the dart towards that new point here, right? Now I'm not marking that that to my bust. Reasons being that I'm not bringing it up to here because I don't want any sharp angles around the bust side. I don't want any poking of material around there, right? So this now becomes my dart on this side, right? So I'm just going to make the center line for the dart. That's the center dart leg. So here we go. This is for now, this is our pattern. So I'm going to connect this side in a curve like so. I'm just going to go ahead and connect this in a curve like so. You can do the curve anyhow you want. So I'm going to draft my neckline now, right? Now you're going to determine what type of neckline you want. Is it a sweetheart neck? This is the moderation I was talking to you about. So if you want a sweetheart neck, for me, I want a sweetheart neck. So I'm just going to make a sweetheart starting from my chest line. You can totally do yours higher or lower depending on how much you want it to be, to how much skin you want to reveal, right? So I'm going to do mine from my armhole. I don't want too much skin. If you want a lot, you can go down, but just make sure it does not come to your bust point. So I'm just going to make mine like so. I'm just tracing it off by hand first, right, to meet this point here, right? So if you want a v-neck, you can just do your v-neck. If you want a square neckline, you can just leave this neckline that we have already there, right? So I'm just going to mark that like so. You can just modify the neck to any neckline you want at all, right? So now let's go ahead and extend our lines so that we can do our back bodies, right? So now I'm going ahead to move my pattern because this is my front bodies, right? So I'm going ahead to move my pattern so I can do the back. So I'm extending my lines. So this is it, right? So now for the back, I'm just going to make a starting point. Okay. So for the back, I'm just going to draw out a line which will serve as my starting point. So this line will serve as my starting point. So now I'm going to insert my zip allowance. So let's say I leave 1 inch for my zip allowance, right? 1 inch all round, all to for my zip allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and connect my points together. Mind you, for the back is going to just stop on this line. It's not extending to the down because I'm not having a side bust dart on the back, because I do not have a bust on the back, right? So now from here, I'm going to go ahead and insert my neck measurement. So on this front side, I'll measure how much I have here. I have 7.5 inches. So yours does not have to be 7.5, guys. Just know that I'm a plus size person, so that's why mine is like that. So you can just measure across your chest, right? So I have my 7.5 like that. Then on this point, I'm going to insert half of my bust, quarter of my bust measurement on my chest line. Then on my affluence line, I'm inserting quarter of my affluence measurement, and on my hip line, I'm inserting quarter of my hip measurements, right? I'm inserting the quarter here. Then I'm going to just go ahead and connect those points like so, right? So I'm inserting the standard dart on it like so. So I'm going to connect my armhole curve first. Connecting my armhole curve. Then now the dart on the back, I usually like my back darts longer, right? So I'm going to start my dart from my chest line, not from my bust line, right? So I'm going ahead to insert half of my bust pan measurement, and I'm connecting it into a straight line, right? So from my hip point, I'm going up by 2.2 inches on the back, right? So on my affluence point, I'm taking half of an inch on both sides for that. So I'm just going to connect that point to this side, to this point here for my back. So the back dart is a little bit different, but it's easier than the front dart, right? Like so. Then I'll connect it to these points that I made here, like so, right? So this is it. Then for the back, I want a V neckline on my back, right? So I'm going to as well pivot my back depth to this point here. You can go higher or lesser, just do what you like, guys. So I'm going to connect it like so, right? So I just have my V neck. So my allowance here, my zip allowance would be like this. So this side will be off, right? So now let me do a little bit of modification, so that we don't have any bulge by the time you add your zip. I'm going to eradicate that bulge on that side. So I'm coming in by half inch from the affluence point, that's on the zip side. I'm coming in by half of an inch. So remember, this is our zip line from here to here. So on this side as well, I'm coming in half of an inch. Then I'm going to be connecting that half of an inch back to this point, that's the hem point here. I'm connecting it like so. So this to then this side to this side, right? So I'm creating a new zip allowance measure. Let me use the blue pen for that side, right? I'm using the blue marker so that you see the difference. So now this blue marker is where we are going to be cutting. We are not going to be cutting the initial zip allowance out. So I'm going to connect it to here like so. So it will help. You know, the human body is not straight, so the zip side is not supposed to be straight, because we have that spinal cord, that at your spine there's a curve, like there's a dip inside there that forms a nice shape. So that's why we are taking this in, so that we can have sort of like a C cut in and then coming out to give room for the bum to sit properly on the lower part of the dress, that's towards your hip, right? So just like we connected the front like so, we are going to do the same thing to the back. So it's coming from here. You can do the shape of the back anyhow you like, but just make sure that you're using the same measurement from here like so. So I'm going to be connecting that like this, right? So guys, we have, remember that at depth, so we have 1 inch of that here. So I'm coming back to pay it here, right? Never forget to pay back your darts, guys. So I'm going to connect it like so. Never forget that, because your measurements will not tally if you forget your darts. So this is it. So this is it about our off shoulder blouse, right? So for the front, we have it here like so, right? Then our front dart here. So for you, you must not do 2 inch of that. You just do the dart that works for you. Is because I'm bustier, so that's why I'm doing this. But if your bust is not, your bust measurement is not as big as mine, you can do 1 inch of that. Whatever works for you on your blouse regularly, that's what you should do. So let me show you how to draft the sleeve, because I'm not going to be cutting this pattern out. I just did this so I can show you. But if you want to cut, you just do it from your neckline to your armhole to your bodice, and you add your sewing allowances. So because this is just for illustration at this point, because when I want to use this pattern, I'm going to convert it into a princess dart pattern, right? So let me turn over the pattern paper and show you how to draft the sleeve. So I'm just drawing this line as my starting point. So now remember that we took don't forget that we took 5 inches out from our basic bodies, right? So I'm going to place my tape on this, my starting point, as 5 inches. Then I'll mark my regular armhole line, which is 8.5, just like we did to the front. I have 8.5. Then I'm going to draw that into a straight line, right? Then we'll still leave that 5 inches on our starting point. Then I'm going to insert the distance from my arm, from my shoulder to my elbow. That's my elbow measurement. I have 14 inches. Then to the sleeve length, so let's assume the sleeve length is 21. So let me mark 21. So if your sleeve length is shorter, you can just go ahead and do it shorter. So I'm just doing it long, so that whenever you want to use a longer version, you can be able to draft that. So this is our elbow point and our sleeve length, right? So I'm just going to be drawing that into a straight line, and then the sleeve length as well, I'm drawing it into a straight line, right? So I'm going to label it. This is my sleeve length, right? This is my sleeve length. This is my elbow line, then this is my armhole line, then this is my starting point, right? So no need to label that. So now I'm going to come back on the starting point. Now you remember that 5 inches we took. I'm going to come back here to mark it 5 inches. If you made your own 4 inches, you come back here to mark 4 inches. If you made it 3 inches, you do mark 3 inches, right? So you mark, I'm marking my 5 inches like so. So on my armhole line, I'm going to measure my bicep circumference divide by 2, because I'm drafting the half scale of the sleeve. So my bicep measurement divide by 2. So let's assume my bicep is 16, so I'm dividing it by 2 is 8. So I'm going to mark 8 inches like so. So I'm going to come with my armhole with my curve, right, and I'll connect like so. Now on this side, that's this point, you're not going to be adding any seam allowances, but on this side you need to add seam allowance, right, because you're going to be connecting this one straight to the hem. So let's leave the seam allowance for now. So on the elbow point, you measure your elbow round, whatever you measure your round of your elbow and you get. So mine is 14 inches, so half of it is 7. So I'm going to mark 7. Then on your sleeve length, if you want this sleeve, like assuming this length is to my wrist, I'll measure my wrist round. Assuming the sleeve length is to my elbow and is stopping here is my elbow round. Assuming is to anywhere this sleeve length is supposed to stop, that's where you will measure, right? So let's assume wherever this is stopping, it's measured 12 inches. I'm just assuming. So I'm just going to mark 12 inch divide by 2. So I'm going to use my ruler to connect like so. Then for this side, this curve here, I'm going to use my curve. I'm not going to be using a ruler for that side, so I'm using my curve here. You can use your pants curve as well. So this is how it is. So now I'm going to add sewing allowance, right? I'm just doing this so that you can see. So from here you add, let's say 1 inch sewing allowance. You can add more or less. Then I'm adding 1 inch everywhere, 1 inch here. Then I'm going to connect like so. Then I'll connect this side as well, right? So now you come to this. If you're using lining or you want to hem, you add your hemming allowance here, or the allowance that you use to turn your lining, or folding allowance, you go ahead and add. So let's assume I need ½ inch here, so I'm going to add ½ of an inch like so. But assuming it's a fabric, let's say it's a lace border that you don't need to add this, that's fine. You will not need to add it. So this is it, right? So if you need allowance on the hem as well, on the sleeve length, that's to hem the sleeve, is fine. You can go ahead and add your allowance. So this is our sleeve, our basic sleeve for our off shoulder. So assuming you want it to be a bell sleeve, now you can go ahead and stop it. Maybe let's say, depends on how you want the bell. Maybe I want the bell from my elbow to my sleeve length, then I can go ahead and stop this sleeve on the elbow, and then I insert my flare or whatever kind of bell I want on this side, right? So assuming I want a trumpet sleeve from my elbow, now I can go ahead and flay it out like so till the hem, right? So you can modify the sleeve the way you like. So this is it about our off shoulder blouse. So this is the sleeve, and then this is the blouse, right? So our blouse is without sewing allowances at this point, so you don't forget to add your sewing allowances. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share this video with your friends, subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified whenever I have a new video up on the channel. Till then, see you in my next video, guys. Bye.